In the first scene of the movie, Bhairava is woken up by his mum, who just came back from fetching wood. She reminds him that he needs to go out early and gives him his breakfast. As he's eating, Bhairava notices the cut on his mother's hand and asks her not to fetch wood out of worry, but she plays it off. She believes blood has not left their house since his father's time and is not something new. Bhairava heads to work after breakfast. On his way, he meets his friend, who helps him by accommodating him on his bike, as his own has a flat tire. After reaching their workplace, they pick up cutlasses, ready to start the day. Inside the house of Bhairava's workplace, the owner Subba Reddy comes down the stairs about to head out, but he is angered as he sees incense burning in front of slaves' pictures, Bhairava's father being one of them. Angry, he kicks them, demanding to know who did it. His wife, who's frightened from his anger, explains that it's the anniversary of their passing, and that she thought the slaves who for their master's life needed to be acknowledged. Annoyed, he yells at her never to do that again, as the slaves only served their purpose, which was to be for his safety, before heading out. In the next scene, Subba welcomes Mr. Keshava Reddy, who wonders if he shouldn't be joining hands with him, who's older and about to become his in-law, instead of creating a rivalry between them. Subba counters by saying that it's a bet and not a rivalry. They both settle down for the cockfight, and after their men prepare their chickens, the fight begins. In the end, Mr. Keshava's cock wins, and Subba readily agrees to the marriage with his daughter Geetha, who's returning from the city in a week. Kata, Mr. Keshava's son, deems it fair, as Mr. Keshava is greater than him in influence and reputation. On their ride back home, Nala, one of Subba's subordinates, is weary of the marriage alliance, as Kata is someone who is fire rather than the light Subba wants him to be. The scene switches, and we see Kata whipping one of his slaves. The young man's grandfather is begging, but Kata shows no mercy. He stops whipping and turns his back. While his back is turned, the young man, who sees a cutlass lying around, picks it up and tries to strike Kata out of resentment, but he's stopped by Kata's loyal subordinate, who cuts off his arm. Fuming that someone dares to try to murder him, Kata carries the young man and pierces him through with a crowbar, forcing the weak old man to look at him. Kata forcefully explains the details of the way the crowbar will pierce through him. He asks for the grandfather's daughter-in-law, in return for his grandson's life. A week has passed, and Geetha is finally back. She is welcomed warmly by the servants, and as the men prepare her bed, Bhairava is immediately enticed by her beauty. Bhairava returns home to his mother, who waiting for him. He is tired of her always waiting for him before she eats, as she hasn't eaten yet, but she doesn't mind and feeds her son happily. Bhairava explains that they had to take care of Geetha's things, and that's why he was late, and his mum is happy to hear of Geetha's return. However, when Bhairava answers her stubbornly, she beseeches him to be polite in front of Geetha. Bhairava doesn't concur, as he wants to always be himself, but she warns him that rich men care more about their daughters than their riches. The next day, at Subba's house, he's wondering why Geetha wants to go out, but she doesn't back down. So he asks Nala to send some men with her. Geetha doesn't want them, but she is reminded by her mother that she is Subba's daughter and needs protection. On their way to the mountain to pay their respects to their god Lord Bhairapa, the men speak of its greatness, but Geetha doesn't feel anything, as she doesn't believe in God. They reach the mountain, and as the men pay their respects, Geetha enjoys herself by running around and basking in the sound of the doves, who greet her with their strange noise. On their way back, Siddha the cripple, one of Geetha's guards, feels that Geetha would be delighted by the black bucks in Lingamyama village, since she loved the doves, and they decide to go there the next day. The next day, Geetha and her men are crouching in the grass like lions preparing to hunt as they wait for the black bucks, but they are nowhere to be seen. When Shanku raises their absence to question, and Bhairava is about to answer, Geetha covers his mouth, shocking Bhairava in the process. She also wonders why the black bucks are not showing up, and Siddha makes a silly excuse that makes Geetha want to cut off his other leg. They pass through the village, but no one is around. Shanku explains that the village was attacked by savages overnight, and the only person remaining is the old woman under the tree. Siddha wonders why she's standing under the tree, and tries to discourage her by saying that fruits won't fall, even if she prays. Shanku wipes her with his scarf, explaining that she's waiting for the flower to fall, as she's the only one who does puja in the abandoned temple. So Geetha instructs Bhairava to pluck some flowers for her. They follow the woman to the temple, and Shanku reveals that her family is gone, and she's the only one alive. On Geetha's request, the woman informs them that she's praying for revenge on those who brought this misfortune to her village, but Shanku doesn't believe it can happen. The old woman's faith is strong though, as she believes that as Bhairava brought the flowers to her hand, so will the enemy's head rest in her hands. Geetha wonders who did such a thing. The scene switches, and a group of men hiding in the pit are fuming at what Subba Reddy has done to them. They swear to find an opportunity to murder Subba, who has forgotten the fear of mortality as he hides behind his men. They are happy to hear that Geetha has been roaming around the village hillocks. Meanwhile, at the dinner table, Subba informs Geetha of her marriage. He gives her no room to oppose, as he only wants her to do as he says. He allows her to go out the next day though, as if pacifying her for the marriage. The next day, on their way out, Geetha is listening to John Denver's song, but the atmosphere in the car is dull. Sita insists that Bhairava's songs are better. Shocked that Bhairava sings, she commands him to sing for her. Though he's shy at first, Bhairava sings. They sing and dance together, and finally, the scene brings them back to the car. As they're driving, a car hits theirs from behind, and they fly forward, but fortunately no one is seriously hurt. Bhairava leads Geetha away as men from the other car pursue them. Bhairava does his best, protecting a scared Geetha from the men. Since he is a great fighter, it is hard for them to capture Geetha. They run, fighting their way, till they find a safe place in a barn, where they hide and Bhairava treats Geetha's injury. That night, Subba gathers his men and they try to find out who attacked his daughter. Things don't go well, because Subba has a lot of enemies, and it's hard to find a needle in a haystack. One of Subba's men, trying to encourage his master, points out that it will be a shame if Subba does not find who tried to touch his daughter. In an attempt to get on his master's good side, he says that the men must be burnt once they've been found out. But his bad luck outweighs his good luck that day. Subba using him as a traitor, so that his reputation and the people's fear of him diminish. Bhairava is welcomed by his mother on getting home, but she becomes worried and scared when she sees his injuries. He explains that Geetha was attacked, and he didn't have time to care for his wounds. Worried, she reprimands him, reminding him that she only has him, while Geetha has others to take care of her. She pleads that they should go and stay with his uncle in the neighboring village and farm in peace. But Bhairava refuses vehemently, as he wants to walk in his father's steps, being Subba Reddy's subordinate, even if it means his life. In her room the next day, Geetha is thinking of Bhairava when her mother walks in, reprimanding her for not coming to try her engagement dress on. Geetha frowns at this, as she doesn't want to get married. However, her mother doesn't want to hear her thoughts, believing she's raving mad for not wanting to marry the man her father chose for her, and defaming her father's name. Mr. Keshava Reddy and Kata Reddy are welcomed by Subba to his home for the engagement. The place is set up, and the engagement procession begins. Kata is impatient and wants to smoke, but his father asks him to wait till the engagement is over. Kata desires Geetha immediately, and looks at her with lust in his eyes. Bhairava brings a plate for his cigarette, blocking his view of Geetha in the process. Kata angrily hits him and puts out the cigarette light on his palm. Geetha slaps Kata as a result, and everyone is taken off guard. Subba apologizes on behalf of his daughter, who studied in the city, while Kata angrily walks out, his father and men in tow. After they leave, Subba quarrels with his daughter, asking her if she's in her right mind, and if she knows that she could have lost her life by doing that. But Geetha doesn't care, as she feels that Kata or anyone has no right to beat up Bhairava, who is ready to save theirs. Angry, her father thinks she's stupid for not being able to differentiate between a slave dog and a king. But Geetha, looking at her father with disgust, replies that Kata is a rabid dog. She'd rather marry a loyal slave dog than an unpredictable person. Fuming, and holding himself from exploding, he warns her that she's crossing the line. But Geetha is ready to rebel. That night, in his room, Kata is unable to hold himself as he keeps slapping the woman underneath him. His brother, worried, asks what the problem is, and he swears to do something to Geetha, who embarrassed him in front of everyone. Meanwhile, Subba seeks advice from his trusted servant Nala, who tells him that a thought can't be destroyed or avoided, but the person who the thought is about can be destroyed. Subba decides to murder Bhairava, as he believes he is responsible for the situation. Nala gathers some men, preparing them to go to Bhairava's house, as it is the order of Subba. At the same time, Shanku, who got wind of the news, rushes to Bhairava's house to warn him to run away. Bhairava doesn't believe that Subba would want to harm him. He is about to go and find out if it's true, but is stopped by his mother, who is worried and begs him just to run, because Subba is powerful. By the time Nala reaches Bhairava's house, he has already fled. Shanku doesn't stop there. He hurriedly climbs the wall to Geetha's window, informing her about what her father has ordered. Shanku informs Bhairava that Geetha is waiting for him at Barapagutta. He leaves his mother at their hiding place, wanting to find out what's going on. She hands him a blanket to cover himself, and a lamp to see the way. Back in Subba's house, Nala informs his master that Bhairava and his mother are gone, and a maid also tells him that Geetha is missing. Subba orders Nala to find and slay Bhairava before the next morning, and to make sure the news about Geetha is well hidden. On Barapa Hill, Bhairava comes to know that Geetha told her father she would marry him, and he thinks she's mad. He implores her to say it's a joke, but Geetha has made the decision not to go back. She swears that she'd rather lose her life than marry Kata Reddy, no matter how rich he is, and she'd prefer to stay with Bhairava. Shanku urgently tells them to run, as their location has been busted, and Bhairava takes Geetha's hand as they run for their lives. Nala is yet again disappointed, as he does not find them on Barapagutta, and Subba warns him not to come back with that message again. Subba heads to Keshava's house, where he informs him that Bhairava took Geetha by force and ran away. However, Geetha is not fooled, as he knows that Geetha probably eloped with the slave. Mr. Kashava reprimands his son, before deeming the crime disrespectful to the elites and declaring that he'll join in the search. Meanwhile, Bhairava and Geetha are at their hiding place. There, Geetha asks what the next step is. He passes her the blanket and bids her goodnight, imploring her to sleep as he imagines a song about their love. The next day, Geetha wakes up in the morning to Bhairava, who stayed up all night wondering what to do. Geetha is hungry, so he feeds her cow milk straight from the udder. They enjoy themselves for a while, but their enjoyment is short-lived as they are attacked by Subba's men. Bhairava can fight the men who ambushed him, but he can't win against Nala and the others who are charging at him, so he runs, dragging Geetha along. They run on the hills for a while, and manage a narrow escape as Bhairava distracts them with a stone. Stopping to rest, they start to run again as the men find their location. But this time they can't escape, because they're surrounded, and Bhairava has no choice but to fight. He makes a hole in their circle, and they escape once again. They run until they reach a bridge that is being held by a log. The log looks weak, but Bhairava and Geetha still cross it, even though they almost fall into the water as the log breaks. They manage to climb up the cliff, and are finally separated from Subba's men. Geetha makes a statement by kissing Bhairava in front of them, and they continue their journey. They see Bhairava's father's village from afar and head there. He is welcomed by a family, after mentioning his father's name. They offer them food, and they also get to bathe in a lake. As they are washing up, Geetha asks him to call her Geetha, not adding respect to her name, and pleads that he should tell her how he truly feels about her. Giving in, Bhairava confesses that he has loved her since he saw her, but felt below her, as she is from a rich family. She urges him to act on his feelings, now that she has come to him, and he kisses her. In the next scene, Bhairava and Geetha are working in the goat house, and Geetha voices her thoughts on their lives as servants, wondering how they don't fight for their freedom. Someone interrupts them, informing them that Subba's men are looking for them from town to town. This makes Bhairava worried, and he wants to get his mother from where he told her to hide. He tells Geetha to wait for him, and though she wants to go with him, she agrees, not wanting to weigh him down. Meanwhile, Nala has gathered Geetha's guards, asking them where Bhairava is. He takes Sita, who honestly doesn't know and is visibly scared, threatening to end him to frighten the others. As Nala is still talking, an axe hits Sita's head, slaying him instantly, and Nala turns to see it was Subba Reddy who did it. Shanku mourns the loss of his friend. At Subba's order, axes are held at the rest of the guards' necks, and Shanku's resolve shakes. He promises to tell Subba where Lakshmama, Bhairava's mother, is, and Subba orders him to bring her. Subba beats Lakshmama awake in her hiding place, and she is tied to a log. She pleads for her son's life, asking him to be spared, if only for the sake of her husband, who his life for his master. But Subba, who doesn't value his servants' lives, doesn't see that as a reasonable excuse. He beats her up, asking her where her son is, but she remains quiet since she doesn't know. Geetha comes in, taking over from Subba. He proceeds to scare her by cutting her face with a sickle, and Shanku begs for her not to be slain. He runs in front of Geetha, but Geetha strangles him with his leg. Not able to take the pain, Lakshmama passes away, much to Subba's annoyance. By the time Bhairava reaches the hiding place, his mother is already gone, and his expiring friend Shanku reveals that it's the work of Subba and Geetha. Bhairava sadly takes her body back to his father's village, where a burial is held for her. As his mother's corpse is burning, Bhairava stares into space. The man who took him in reminds him that it is not time to cry, and that as long as they believe that they're slaves and don't fight for their freedom, they will remain prey to the elites. In the next scene, Geetha and Bhairava are under the heavy rain and mourning. Bhairava mourns the way his mother was tortured, and Geetha almost leaves, wanting to take her as she believes she started everything, and with her gone, it will end. Bhairava's shout brings her to her senses. He implores her not to see it that way, as the problem is not their eloping, but rather the mentality that the poor people have, as they never fought back for their freedom. Geetha believes this decision will end in his murder, but Bhairava's resolve to fight back does not shake, as he has nothing left to lose. Not wasting time, Bhairava gathers men who have all been oppressed by the elites, forming an army ready to fight for their freedom. As the villagers are getting ready for war, Geetha looks proud and happy about the revolution. Meanwhile, Kashava and Subba, who are resting, curse Bhairava for riling up the villagers against them. Subba feels it's a passing thing that can be easily dealt with, but Kashava warns that it might turn into a wildfire, and that it needs to be quenched. Acting on it, he has already sent Geetha for the job. Geetha drives into the village with his men and sends them to drive the villagers out, but the houses are empty. He calls out angrily to the air that they should surrender Bhairava, but Bhairava comes out instead. When he demands Geetha, the villagers come out with their weapons ready, and war breaks out. The fed-up villagers fight with their might, both women and men alike, and they succeed in pursuing Geetha away for a while. The next day, Bhairava takes the bodies of Kashava's men to Subba's house and warns him not to cross the village, as they have chosen to live their lives in peace, or else they'll end up deceased too. He also reminds Subba that Geetha came to him of her own volition, and they're in love now, so he should leave them be. He further extends an invitation to the other slaves to join them in the revolution if they're tired of being controlled, and if they try to stop him, he won't hesitate to end them too. In the next scene, Gangal, an elite, tries to ally with Bhairava as he has always wanted to destroy Subba, but they reject his offer because he aims to become lord of the land, and the villagers don't want a lord to rule over them. Bhairava also warns Gangal that his head might hang beside Subba's own if he doesn't let his men choose freedom too. Not letting the opportunity slip away, Subba meets Gangal, asking him to join him and his men, as two tigers are not meant to be fighting during this period. When Gangal accepts his proposal, he promises to destroy Bhairava in a way that even in 100 years to come, if anyone thinks of rebellion, they'll shiver in fear. In the next scene, Geetha and Rahul, another woman from the village, are washing at a lake. Rahul teases her that Bhairava is waging war for her, when others leave pregnant girls behind. They continue talking and hear suspicious movement, but believe it's from animals. Not long after, they are ambushed by Keshava's men, and Rahul pushes Geetha forward, urging her to run. Geetha runs to the forest, away from the men, and manages to escape them narrowly by hiding between thick branches, but is unfortunately discovered by Kata. A cow drags Somaya, the man who took Bhairava in, to the middle of the town, and the villagers wail. Bhairava sees a message from Kata, provoking him by saying he will enjoy Geetha and take her life before him, daring him to come and stop him. Later, Subba enters the room in which Geetha is being held, and slaps her for running away. He beats her up, lamenting that he educated and raised her, only for her to end up embarrassing and soiling his name. He claims the only way to pacify this is her life, and he tries to stab her. But Geetha stabs him instead, with a piece of glass she held in her hands. On a hill near the village, Kata prepares his men to ambush Bhairava, who is expected to be on his way to rescue his damsel. Unfortunately for them, Bhairava and the villagers are ready for the battle, and they even attack the men lying in wait to ambush him. It turns into a full-blown war, with Keshava and even Gangal being part of the fight. During the fight, Keshava and Gangal fall down, while Bhairava and Kata face each other head-on. The fight seems to be going in Kata's favor, but Geetha interrupts their fight. Seeing an opportunity, Kata throws the axe at Geetha, and she falls. Bhairava angrily uses the axe to end Kata, striking him more than once. The narrator ends the movie by explaining that a grand wedding was held for Bhairava and Geetha, as she survived the injury. In the aftermath of all this, Bhairava joined politics, and is well known to everyone.